You could wake up one day and be 93 and you spent your whole life trying to play it safe and still regret the fact that you never took a risk on something. And I think I just went into 2021 saying, I might fail at this, but honestly, going after it and failing is still worth more to me than staying and never taking that risk.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey guys, what a great episode for you today. I chat with Lacey Reddix. She's the founder of Olokun Minerals, and her team are basically harvesting clean water and minerals from salty water / brine / seawater with the goal of protecting the world's clean water supplies, so ensuring that we have clean water for folks. She tells a really powerful story of the impact of climate change on our clean water supplies. By 2025, 2/3 of the world's population is at risk of clean water, which got me shook. I don't know about you, and she dives into how we can prevent that from happening, what technologies to look out for, what she's excited for in this space, what we need more of, more entrepreneurs, more investments, and just how fun and collaborative the climate tech space is. So really, really fun conversation that I enjoyed getting to know Lacey. Here she is. All right, so excited to dive in with you, Lacey. Before we get started, I wanted to ask you, what's bringing you joy these days?
What's bringing me joy these days? So honestly, I think, so I've started a gratitude practice of just starting the day with like really thinking about or being intentional of writing out 3 things I'm grateful for. And I think the change in just like my mindset for the day has really brought me a lot of unexpected joy. So I would say that's probably like the one thing that I think that I'm really happy about. And I'll stop there.
No, it's interesting how the reframing can be so powerful.
Yeah.
Like even just the simple reframing of not I need to do this, but I get to do this, or I choose to do this, or just waking up and thinking about your day and, oh my goodness, I get to do all these things is really powerful for me. I definitely had that this feeling this morning of, my goodness, I get to chat with Lacey, get to know about her, about Olokun. Martin and I are going to go on a date later. It's Friday. We're going to go see comedy. How awesome.
Where are you calling in from again?
We're in Austin, Texas. You should let us know if you're ever in town.
Yes. It looks nice there, so I'll let you know too. But yes, I think in this day and age too, there's just so much going on. There's a lot of heaviness actually that happened even this week, and so I think just understanding that life is so precious, and there's still so much joy and so much to be grateful for in any moment, no matter what's really going on. And things could always get worse, unfortunately, but just realizing kind of like the beauty in every single moment, I think is kind of like the right mindset to have moving forward.
Yeah, totally. And someone mentioned to me recently about how the things you already have are probably the most meaningful things to you, your family, your good friends, yourself, and your own sense of purpose. And that's stuff that people can't take away, and really appreciating that day to day is so important.
Agreed.
All right, Lacey, I am so excited to get to learn more about Olokun and what you're building. So for context for folks, you're building a sustainable mining company with the goal of protecting clean water sources, as well as harvesting minerals in a productive way. And before we go in and I ask you to explain more, I would love for you to tell us about how you came up with the name Olokun and what it means.
Yes. So I'll start by saying we're located in Southern California, and we started around the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. This is also a lot of racial reckoning that was happening during that time. We started as a way to really look at the problems around desalination, and the largest desalination plant or facility in the Western Hemisphere is located in San Diego, so not that far from where I started Olokun Minerals. And that plant was named Poseidon Water. So initially I was thinking about the reference to a lot of the same Greek and Roman gods and goddesses, or just a lot of references in general to a certain demographic or a certain group, and not as many references to others. And so really I started looking into, how can we highlight the fact that we are a Black women-owned company, or we're starting a Black women-owned company. And I really fell in love with Olokun and the story behind Olokun, which is a Orisha in the Yoruba religion, focused on all bodies of water. So Olokun is the ruler of not only the ocean, but all water bodies and all other water deities. And basically the story, or the people that follow Olokun are said to inherit great health and great wealth, which I will not I will
I'm not
take
going
that
to say
advice.
no to
Yes.
that.
But yes, and so it also represents, so Olokun represents the depths of the ocean and the riches from the depths of the ocean. And that really resonates with what Olokun really is about. We take water, initially we were looking at seawater that was turned into fresh water. And in that process, the minerals that come from the depths of the ocean and being able to extract those and use those for supply chains, many of which we already use today, but we source them in a different way. So anyway, the story of Olokun really resonated not only with the story of the business that we were creating, but who we were as founders.
And what a beautiful nod to your culture, to our culture, and what a beautiful story. You started to tell me a little bit about the problem that you guys are addressing at Olokun. Can you share an overview of it?
Yes. So I'll start by saying my background is in civil engineering with a concentration in water resources and environmental engineering. And I also say too, and I'm a proud product of Jackson, Mississippi, which I know has gone through its own water issues. But I think that background and what I have studied and my experiences have really led me to this point of wanting to solve the problems around clean water security. So really the mission of Olokun Minerals is to solve for two critical things, and that's how can we secure clean water in a way that's sustainable and beneficial to the environment, as well as supplying or securing vital resources that we will also need. And so those are the two things that we're really after. And kind of the reason behind that is because I see that as the two main issues that we're going to need to address as climate changes, as the world changes, and as we grow as a population.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you help us understand how big the problem is and the scale?
Yeah. So water, there's so many problems here, but we're facing a future where 2/3 of the world's population may face water shortages by as early as 2025. I mean, that's literally 3 years from now. Literally, yes, literally 3 years from now. So it's
Literally
coming
2 years from
yeah,
now.
I was going to say 2 to 3 years from now, we'll start seeing those impacts. And also too, I just want to highlight climate change. I know climate change can be somewhat of a tricky subject for a lot of different people. But if you just look at the facts, so let's negate the word climate change and we look at what is actually factual and true today, and that's that there's more carbon in the atmosphere than ever before. We know that our glaciers are melting, our ice caps are melting. We know that the freshwater sources that we do have are dwindling, and we know that sea levels is rising. So no matter what, we're trending towards less freshwater sources and larger amounts of salty, briny waters. And we're going to have to do something about that. Another fact that I think is important is if you look at population growth, and this is something that just blows my mind every time I rethink about it. But in 1929, which is the year that my grandfather was born, and it's less than 100 years ago, there were 2 billion people on Earth. And
Mm.
today we just tipped 8 billion people. So in the last 100 years, we've quadrupled the world's population. And not only is the population significantly higher than it was just 100 years ago, we've also increased the amount of natural resources we are consuming individually. And that's impacting the planet as a whole. And we just can't sustain that. And so, really, the problem that we're solving is twofold. We are trying to clean as much water as we can, but we also need to figure out more creative ways to source the metals and minerals needed to live the lives that we have become accustomed to as part of just the modern way that we live. And in that process, we really need to be thinking about circular solutions and solutions that are more that make the processes that we do more efficient, because we are not only consuming more, but we're more wasteful. And so there's a lot of different things there that I think that we are trying to tackle, which I realize is very ambitious. But I think that, it's worth going after. And I think we are finding ways to really make this happen, which is really exciting and what really lights me up. So when you talk about sparking joy at the beginning of this interview, I mean, that really does spark me joy. And it has given me a lot of fulfillment over the last 2 years since starting the company.
Very powerful, makes a ton of sense. So thank you for sharing that with us and setting the context. I want to ask which of the 2/3 of the population is most at risk here?
Yeah. So really, and it goes back to those that are in climates where those climates are drying. So I'm looking more so at what's already starting to happen in Sudan, in the Middle East, in a lot of areas where those populations might be Black and brown people. And so we're already starting to see it there. But a lot of times, and I want to highlight this as well, we think that because it's happening over there, it's not going to happen to us. But I think this is also a good this is a good time to highlight that we are more connected than I think than we realize. COVID was a really great example of showing that something that happens in one community it's very easy to affect other communities. The war in Ukraine is also another example of how one conflict can really impact us. Because of globalization, because we're so connected, we really have to be conscious of how droughts in other areas are affecting those communities, because we will see a trickle down, or the effects will start to impact us more and more significantly as we see droughts becoming more and more severe.
Really strong point about how connected we are and how things across the planet affect us. It's such a small planet if you actually kind of take a moment to think about it. And we're so dependent on one another. I'm so excited and glad that you're working in this space, Lacey, and so pleased that this sparks joy for you. I feel like that's also one of the pursuits of life, is to find work that's meaningful, and it sounds like you're there. So how are you addressing it with Olokun? How are you addressing this challenge?
Yeah, so our solution is really to, we have a new or innovative way of filtering out or separating out minerals from brines. In the past, those filtration methods have really focused on one metal or mineral at a time. And we have a way to basically separate out multiple things at the same time. And we're also doing it in a way that doesn't rely on the use of lots of acids and chemicals to do so. And so that's really the innovation here. Again, it's relatively early. So we're still, in the lab. We're still doing a lot of testing in order to figure out how do we really scale this. But it's very promising. And what we know is that there's a huge market need. And that's kind of what is allowing us to have the momentum that we have to keep moving forward.
So it sounds like you're building this proprietary technology.
Yes. And basically the whole idea is think of it as a filtration method. And our business model is extraction as a service. So really what we offer at Olokun Minerals is the service of taking wastewater streams and filtering out what's valuable, and hopefully at the end allowing you to, at the very least, have a water source is closer to being clean water than it was before. And at the end too, you have metals and minerals that can then be sold into different supply chains, or create another revenue stream for our customers.
Yeah. So I studied chemical engineering in undergrad, and you're bringing me to a lot of these classes in third and fourth year, junior and senior year. So I love it. So it sounds like more effective filtration and kind of more clean absorption of these minerals for other use.
Exactly. And you might already be familiar with chromatography. So we're utilizing chromatography in a way that in the past has been used a lot in pharmaceuticals, but not as much in mineral filtration and separations. And so that's kind of the new way that we're thinking about utilizing chromatography.
So cool. Who are your partners and what's your team like?
And so I started this company as a solo founder, and I want to say how amazing it is to have a co-founder. And for any other entrepreneurs out there, I just want to reiterate, to find a really good co-founder, it really is life-changing. And she compliments me in so many ways, and I just want to make sure I shout her out today. And
what's her name?
Palanda Watkins Curry. Dr. Palanda Watkins Curry is a co-founder, a PhD chemist, has worked doing solid state chemistry. So she's the technical co-founder for Olokun Minerals, and really brings a lot, not only to Olokun Minerals as a company and allowing mine to come up with these different innovations, but just to me too as the CEO, being able to have somebody to balance and think through ideas. She's been great. And so we make up, the core team. We have a number of different partners that we've been able to work with. Harvard Business School with some of their students to do some economic development work, NYU Engineering with getting some interns to help on the lab side. We are currently funded, so we love our investment partners. Propeller VC is a fund that's doing a lot of work in ocean and climate space. And then outside of that, we've worked with the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator here in Los Angeles, California, the Venture for Climate Tech program that's based in New York, and then WSP. WSP is a engineering consulting firm that works a lot they consult for many companies that would be considered our customers. And so those have been the partnerships thus far. We're always looking for new collaborations and customers. So very much open to hearing from companies that work in the water space, as well as companies that might have wastewater streams, briny wastewaters that need to be cleaned, whether that's oil and gas, geothermal energy, desalination. Would love to hear from you.
And they can find you at Olokun's website.
Yes, Olokun's website. Yeah, that would be great.
Amazing. And then what's on the horizon for you guys?
So we recently were funded. So we have we've raised our pre-seed fundraise to do more research and development. Over the next year, we'll be doing a number of pilots. And so really the goal is to get out of the lab and get out into the real world and do more demonstration pilot projects. And so really the next 12 months are going to be focused on that goal, getting to a point where we can basically demonstrate in the real world with real world customers what our capabilities are, and get feedback from those pilots.
Such an exciting time to be building. You know what? I want to ask about your story of getting into entrepreneurship, Lacey, as you started to touch on that a little bit. What was that like for you? How did you make the plunge, given you had an engineering background?
Yes. So I don't know about you, Jennifer, but as an engineer, and you can be very risk averse. And I know that might be a crux for a lot of different people, but really this idea of either needing things to be perfect or not wanting to fail. So especially as a civil engineer, failure could lead to loss of life. There's a lot of things that you associate it with, and why you make things so redundant so that you don't reach failure. And so I had to really shift how I looked at failure before I could even feel comfortable taking a leap. But I think what helped was, 2020, as crazy as it was, as painful as it might have been, it was really a turning point in a way to expand my mindset around the fact that life is very short. And you can take that in a lot of ways. But one of the things that you learn when you think about, how short life is, you learn that, there's never a right time to go after the things that you want to achieve in this life. Tomorrow is not promised. And also, during the pandemic, we had family Zoom calls. I don't know if you did that or if your family. There was a lot of connections, with families. So we had a weekly family Zoom call where I got to connect with my great uncles and aunts and cousins, and we talked about their life and things that they really loved and things that they regretted. And I think hearing their stories also made me realize that you could wake up one day and be 93 and you spent your whole life trying to play it safe and still regret the fact that you never took a risk on something. And I think I just went into 2021 saying, I might fail at this, but honestly, going after it and failing is still worth more to me than staying and never taking that risk. And getting to that point is really what allowed me to, it really felt like I was like jumping off a cliff. So it allowed me a lot to take the leap. And honestly too, there was a lot of serendipity, just lucky moments, I would say, that happened very early on. I just happened to be on a Clubhouse call when they were talking about climate, when they were talking about, the Venture for Climate Tech program. And because of that, I applied, and then that gave us our first grant. And so that grant allowed me to
apply to On Deck, or
not to On Deck, but to I did apply to On Deck actually through just networking with different people, but also to Venture for Climate Tech. So On Deck actually was one of the first programs that I did, and then in addition to On Deck, I did Venture for Climate Tech. But both programs, one, allowed me to kind of create my own community in the climate space, because I really didn't. I didn't know where to start. But having a community really helped, and then having funding. So having grant funding to just get started was really the confirmation that I needed, that I could go after this. And so those two things really allowed me to go in that direction. And I will say, this is the last thing I'll say on this, is really what I did was take advantage of very lucky moments. And there's a quote, I'm going to misquote it, around the best entrepreneurs. First of all, everyone gets a lucky break, but the best entrepreneurs maximize that luck. And so I think somebody told me that really early on, before a lot of this started happening. And I just kind of committed to, as much luck or as much good fortune that comes into my life, I'm going to maximize it to the utmost potential, just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. So that's kind of been my mission, I would say, from starting.
It reminds me of actually this notion of success is the intersection of opportunity and preparation.
Exactly.
And really like jumping on every opportunity and making the most of it. Sounds like the ethos of what you're describing. And then the other thing that came to mind for me as you were sharing is how much you value your team and your partners, and bringing back to Olokun. And I'll share an African proverb, which is, if you want to go far, go together. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And it's all about the folks that you bring along with you in the journey. So sounds like you were overcoming this fear of failure, potentially, maybe like a bit of risk aversion. Were there any other maybe voices or gremlins or limiting beliefs that you had that you are working on today or were able to work on to get to where you are today with Olokun?
Yes. So outside of failure, right? So getting to the root of what failure really means. Why are you afraid to fail? What is it strike within you? Is there an inner wound that you were trying to protect? And for me, there was maybe two things. It was not feeling good enough, I think was like a big one that I needed to get over. And I think at the core of that was, because if I could just get myself to realize that I am worthy no matter, what's going on, then there's other things, there's other layers that I can let go of. One of those layers being caring what people think. I think as an entrepreneur, you really cannot care at all what anybody has to say. And like you're moving in a way that every part of this journey is going to be somebody else with an opinion that honestly might be really valid. After not caring, like you have to go through not caring what your friends think or like people that you grew up with think, that's one layer. And then that becomes really easy. But then it's not caring what investors might think, and being okay with like hearing no, or being okay with negotiating, which was something that was really hard for me actually going through negotiating term sheets, mainly because, I was very much not somebody who wanted to rock the boat, not somebody who wanted to be confrontational. And like caring what people think might not be like on you, but it might be, I don't want them to feel like I'm difficult. And so just, you have to get over that. And I'm sure, this is going to be an ongoing thing. And I just think about even the leaders and entrepreneurs that I admire and the amount of criticism that they receive on different levels, and being okay if that's the level that I achieve or that I aspire for. I have to one day be okay with that level of criticism, honestly. And I don't know if my nervous system is ready right now, but that's something that I'm just really thinking about and trying to be conscious of moving forward. And then go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, you never get anywhere without standing for something.
Exactly.
And also in entrepreneurship, you need to be non-consensus. You need to see around corners. You need to have a vision of what the future is like and building it, and have that level of confidence and boldness that you can make it happen that others may not believe in. And that's what makes a great entrepreneur. Obviously, balance with a healthy dose of humility and being able to see and accurately evaluate what you're doing, whether it's right or wrong, whether you're making mistakes, how to correct them, grow. But you need that to be a good entrepreneur. And
Exactly.
it's a work in progress for all of us. I hear it from every entrepreneur that I chat with.
Agreed. One last point too, with both of those things, I completely agree with you, Jennifer, in standing for something and being able to be clear on what you're standing for. I think that comes with having clarity of what you want, what's your purpose in life. And people talk about purpose a lot, but like, what do you really want to achieve in this life? That takes time. I think it took me at least 2 years to get actually clear on, this is really what I care about. And it doesn't come from ego. It doesn't come from fear. Like, this is like a core belief in me, and this is what I think I should be doing. And I think also too, with this unlayering or unraveling of the different layers, keeping you from going after what you want, it's really trying to be in touch with your intuition. And that's something that I'm still looking to do as well, is just make sure that I can understand and hear my intuition above any other voice, whether it's outside of myself or inside of myself. And it's distinguishing intuition from fear or ego is kind of been kind of like an ongoing journey for me.
Yeah, process. For me, I think about that as make sure you're always running towards something, not away from something, because fear tends to be us running away from things.
Exactly.
And as I practice listening to my intuition, which I love that you bring that up, we must get together, Lacey, and hang out.
Yeah,
I'm hearing a lot of things I resonate with. But there it's like spending time with myself, right? Listening to Jennifer and trying to focus on what do I want versus all the noise of what society's expectations are or what you think people want of you, and just getting in touch with what you want. Is any practice helpful for you in connecting with your intuition?
So I know people talk about meditation a lot, but I have started to meditate, and I cannot knock meditation at all, and journaling. So I think meditation allows me to really be silent or get still enough to hear. And I think journaling allows me to understand what other voices are kind of going on that I need to kind of filter through in order to really get to being able to act on the voice that I'm hearing, like during that meditation.
My husband started meditating as well recently and really loves it. I think for me, it's running, going on runs and just listening to myself and getting to connect with me and walks and stuff like that. All right. Awesome. How do you feel about transitioning back to talking about the global water supply? Is there anything else here that you wanted to touch on that we haven't?
Yeah, no, we can keep going.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing that with us. That was lovely. So, coming back to global water supply, I'm so curious to get a sense of what the ecosystem of solutions looks like. So, we have the technology that you and your team is building. What are other solutions to look out for in this space?
So, I'm really excited about this idea of atmospheric water generation. You might hear it called AWG, atmospheric water generation. You might hear it called zero source water, but it goes back to the same thing, and that's sourcing water from the air. And again, with the issues that were going on in Jackson, Mississippi recently, that was one of the solutions that I put forward, and we were able to get a few companies. Thank you to Source Water, I will put them out there, and Moses West Foundation. They both have solutions in this space where you can basically take the humidity in the air, turn it into clean, drinkable water, and then that be the source of water for different communities. And what that solves for a lot of people is, one, it's a water that you can trust. You can still filter it through your own system. You can still test it to make sure it meets just your level of or the level standards of drinking water that are needed. But you're not having to rely on extremely expensive infrastructure, and infrastructure in Jackson, which is not that large of a city, is still over $1 billion worth of repairs that need to be made. And that's just one city. And when you think about the fact that infrastructure is aging across the country, there's a lot of cost associated with trying to make sure that we all have access to water, just based on the sources that the clean water sources that we've been relying on for so long that are currently we're losing. And so I think atmospheric water generation is definitely one that I'm really interested in. There are other solutions around wastewater that I understand in theory, but I cannot wrap my head around just yet.
You need to get a PhD in that specific.
So there are in the wastewater space, being able to take your wastewater and clean it well enough for it to be drinking water. So those are solutions that I think are on the horizon and are here actually, and are exciting in that space.
Yeah. As I think back to what you shared with us, 2/3 of the world's population is at risk of water shortages in 2 years' time by 2025. How do we not fail at preventing that?
So I think we have to think about allocating the money, the resources needed. So not only funding needed to build projects that can actually be used in those areas. So in a lot of those areas, you'll likely need to do desalination because it's in an area where it might be too hot to, there's not a lot of groundwater sources, and then there might not be as much humidity as you might see in other areas. So in areas with high humidity, you can definitely do more of that zero source water, atmospheric water generation, but desalination is likely going to have to be a solution for those communities. And the issues with desalination is there is some construction time involved. There's also, again, sustainable issues around we need to be able to have a circular solution around the brine that's created, which is what we're helping with. And you also need to be able to power these operations. The good thing about a lot of these areas is that you have a lot of direct sunlight, which you can use solar energy in a way that you might not be able to use in other areas, which is a benefit. So there are opportunities for these desalination solutions to potentially be done using a renewable energy source and not needing fossil fuels in order to power those. So that could be a way that we could move forward. But I also think that there just needs to be more people in this space coming up with great ideas and trying those out. There was an on deck, I think there was a saying that people said with, we need more shots on goal. And that's really the point. We need more people trying new things and seeing what works.
Got it. And speaking really plainly with us, Lacey, how are you feeling about how we're tracking toward protecting clean water supply? Because I'm asking because I'm worried.
So to be completely honest, I think I, in this moment, am worried as well, as far as, I don't know, have you seen Don't Look Up? I hate to reference this movie.
Oh, yeah. This is the political movie that came out on Netflix last year around this time.
Yes, it was. And the whole point of Don't Look Up was more so equating the climate change to a meteor hitting Earth and people not really paying attention to it. So it feels kind of like that still, where we're saying it. I mean, and I feel like 2021 was a really big year to say, hey, we need to be thinking about this. We are in the last decade before things become irreparable, and we really need to change before 2030. So at this moment, I do feel a heightened sense of we need to be doing something. But I also am hopeful that, every year there's more people coming into the climate space, a lot of extremely smart, brilliant, talented, hardworking people. And I want to believe that there is still hope that this can be turned around. I think about people who procrastinate maybe like the day before a test, right? So you have like a 2 weeks before going into a test, and you might wait till a day or 2 days, or maybe even the night before to cram for that test. So what I'm trying to say is that there's probably going to be a lot of efforts closer to 2023 to turn things around. So I'm not completely, I don't think that because we are in 2022 right now and it's not trending, that we should completely lose hope. But I hope that there will be more people between now and the next 7 years, really, to have more people to really see these solutions ramp up.
So I'm hearing we need a lot more folks working in the space, trying out and experimenting with potential solutions. What about funding? What else with respect to the landscape?
And I don't know if you've already seen it, Jennifer, too, but people who have never thought about climate in the past are now having climate funds. And I see it literally in almost every single investor across the board.
Climate schools.
Climate schools project is an example. Terra.do is an example. There's a lot of people who are waking up to the fact that this is needed across different industries. So no matter what industry you're in, whether, even in the arts, here in California, there's a huge entertainment community, and there are a lot of people working in entertainment who want to do something about climate. And so they've they've started to commit to doing more documentaries, raising more awareness about it. So I do think that there are different, in I go back to investments. There are a lot of different people who are waking up to it, making them more aware, which means investments in that space are becoming greater and greater as well. And people are understanding that if we don't have a planet to live on, then literally nothing else matters. So nothing else outside of climate, nothing is as important, I would say, in this moment in time than investing in climate. And honestly, there is a huge financial upside if we were to get it right. Like if we were to save the world, that's a huge value add. And I believe that money should equate to the value that you put into the world.
Yeah. We've talked about what we need to do to prevent that. What does a different, more positive scenario look like for you? You mentioned some technologies that you're looking forward to.
What I'm the most happy about is the amount of collaboration that's happening across different companies and this change in mindset. So I think most capitalistic mindsets are very self-oriented, really trying to beat their competition, and then this space just feels more community oriented, sense of an abundance mentality as opposed to scarcity. And I think that is also really hopeful, because it's not, when you think about a triple bottom line approach, or the approach of not just looking at how much money you can potentially make from this opportunity, you start to see synergies, and you also realize that there's ways for us to complement each other within our businesses, as opposed to trying to feel like we need to beat somebody or annihilate the competition. And so in that space, I really am excited and really happy. Outside of that, I am outside of even water, I'm really excited about fusion energy. There's a breakthrough in fusion energy that just happened in the last few days. And that's also really hopeful, because that's a clean energy source that could potentially replace fossil fuels. And this is new science that we've never had before. And I feel like we'll likely have many of those breakthroughs or announcements coming out more frequently, which is great. So even though in this moment I might not be as hopeful, I think every day brings another some new revelation that completely changes the trajectory of our world in a way that we couldn't have thought about before.
I've heard a lot about, we want more entrepreneurs in the space, more solutions, more testing. Funding keeps coming in, that's great. And we are making breakthroughs, sounds like, continually, which is hopeful. How about day-to-day folks who may not have it in the cards to become an entrepreneur or investor? Is there more we can do to contribute positively toward protecting the climate?
Yeah, I think the main thing that we can do as individual citizens is vote. Policy impacts so much. A lot of these early a lot of these early innovations are either coming from a national lab that's funded from the US government, or they're being funded. Early funding is coming from grants before they go after venture capital funding. And money going to those spaces comes from the government. And if we vote people that we want to be thinking about that, I mean, our vote allows us to put in power people who are going to be thinking about that versus not. We also have the ability to change policies around how we consume, and further regulate certain industries so that we're not trending towards being a more consumer focused economy. And so I think the number one thing people can do is vote. And then second, I think they can be more conscious of their buying, whether that's directly buying. So you can be more eco-friendly, and there's a lot of different, be conscious of greenwashing, but consumers are becoming more and more aware of their buying habits. And I think that influences companies to change the direction that they go, because they're producing based off of what their customers want. But then also how you invest. So there's a couple of companies that are specifically focused on making sure that your investment dollars go to companies that are really focused on sustainability and climate. And I think Climatize is one company that comes to mind. There are a few others as well, but really those are the three main ones. Thinking about how you vote, what your buying habits are, and where you're investing your money.
Yeah. Lacey, have you heard of Joro, the app?
I have. I don't know why I have. Yes, I have heard of Juro.
Joro. I want to make a plug for it for our listeners also to go check out, in addition to Olokun. But we had their founder, Sanchali Pal, on the pod, and her app basically helps a consumer day-to-day track how their consumption is contributing to climate change. And like, you get to understand just the caloric components of the food you take in. You get to understand how your habits contribute toward energy consumption and how you can make healthier habits, and you can track those. And that was really helpful just to get a sense of what impact you can have.
I'm going to download the app right now. I promise. After we record, I'm downloading Joro.
Yeah, and I'll also make an introduction because I think you'll enjoy connecting with each other as female founders in California and on a mission to save our planet.
Thank you. I would appreciate the introduction. Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, amazing. Lacey, this was so fun. I learned a ton from you. Is there anything else you wanted to leave us with before we head out today?
I guess my last parting words is, I want people to feel like they can reach out to the people. Like, a lot of times when we want to do something different than what we're doing currently, it just feels so far away. And if I can just be somebody or to connect with, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. People connect with me on LinkedIn all the time, and reach out, and we can have an introductory conversation. If there's anything that I can do to help connect you to somebody in my community that might help you along your journey, I would love to do so. I think what we want to do is just make this space as welcoming as possible so that people realize that this is really the future. And you might as well do it today versus waiting tomorrow. Again, tomorrow's not promised, and that there's a lot of layers to that statement. Yes, just wanted to let people know that they can reach out to me on all channels if needed to help with this transition.
I know how tough entrepreneurship, taking that step into it, can be. And so that's a wonderful offer from you, Lacey. Lacey, thanks for spending the time with us today. I really appreciated it. And thanks for teaching us about the state of the global clean water supply.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like what you hear, leave a review and share.